The lady had just stepped out from an evening at theatre, smiling and chatting to her companion, and just as she reached her coach, a man stepped out from the shadows, pointed a gun at her head, and he fired. Shockingly, her murderer was a reverend. This is a story of Rev James Hackman. This is a tale almost 250 years later, which is still shrouded in mystery. Hi, and welcome back to the Historical Crimes and Criminals podcast. I'm Steve, your host. Jonathan Swift, the writer of Gulliver's Travels, hated superstition, and he particularly despised the writer and astrologer John Partridge, whom he called a starmonger and a quack. Partridge was a politician who had a peculiar practice of predicting the deaths of notable figures in his popular writings. These usually turned out to be inaccurate, and both hated each other, and Partridge wrote sniping articles about Swift, and Swift decided to get revenge. In January 1708, writing under the pseudonym Isaac Biggerstaff, Swift published a letter, Predictions for the year 1708, and he forecast the death of Partridge of a raging fever. And 3 months later, just in time for April Fool's Day, he published another, purporting to be written by a man employed in the revenue, confirming that Partridge had indeed died. Swift also composed a verse eulogy for Partridge, damning the man himself. But Partridge, very much alive, but he was plagued with mourners outside his home and had problems ordering goods from tradesmen. He disseminated a letter saying he was still living, to which Bickerstaff responded that no one would be alive could have possibly written such damned stuff as this. And by all accounts, Partridge's business and reputation suffered for the rest of his life. We always expect men or women of the church to lead by example. However, history is sometimes shown as exactly the opposite. As I've told friends while researching and compiling these episodes, you really can't make up stuff that history throws up, and this certainly applies to the historical story of the Reverend Edward Drax Free, who was born in 1764. He studied at Oxford, where his undergrad behaviour was so outrageous that the college had considered expelling him. But when the sleeping village of Sutton in Bedfordshire presented an opening, the church appointed him as rector, and the parishioners couldn't have known what was coming. His sole interest in his living seemed to be as a means of funding a debauched lifestyle. From the start, he seemed eccentric and neglected his duty to conduct Sunday services. He was also seen cutting over 300 oak trees around the village to sell for timber. He was seldom sober and frequently quarrelled with his parishioners over the fees that he sought to extract for baptisms and funerals, and over the wages that he failed to pay his employees. The church attendance declined sharply till eventually almost no one attended, and if anyone turned up for church services, he galloped through the services, leaving out the difficult or time-consuming bits, such as sermons. He was known to keep an extensive collection of pornographic literature, and in need of a little bit of extra cash, he stripped the lead off the church roof and sold it. And whereas Most churchyards at the time were grazed by sheep to keep the grass in check. The rector went one better and turned the churchyard into a farmyard, and sheep were seen relieving themselves on the porch. Horses and cows disturbed funerals, and his pigs dug up the graves. Incredibly, during his time in the position, he had 5 illegitimate children by his various young housekeepers, despite, it's said, being repulsive in every imaginable way. The parishioners appealed to have him dismissed, but due to slack church regulations, even all his misbehaviour was not enough to have him thrown out of the position. But his mistake came when he tried to sue the local landowner, Montague Burgoyne, for not attending church. And Burgoyne was found not guilty, and he launched in 1823 a counter-legal suit that 7 years later caused the chief ecclesiastical court to remove Free from his position. Reverend Free sold the entire contents of the vicarage, barricaded him in with his latest mistress, and shot at anyone who approached. His parishioners, led by the Archdeacon of Bedford, laid siege to him, and he was eventually starved into submission and left in 1830 after 22 years in the role. Unsurprisingly, the Reverend would get no other ecclesiastical role and died in 1843, a beggar, run over by a varnish maker's cart. And it was due to him that in 1840 Parliament passed a law that streamlined the process, whereby the church could discipline erring clerics. Martha Ray was born in 1744. She was a daughter of a staymaker in Covent Garden and served an apprenticeship to a cloakmaker in St John's Lane, Clerkenwell, when she was only 13. During the apprenticeship, when she was 16 and he was 41, she met Lord Sandwich, who took a liking for Martha. Sandwich was married, although separated from his wife. His wife was considered to be mad and lived in an apartment at Windsor Castle. And, oh yes, that's the same Lord Sandwich of bread and meat fame. He set Martha as his mistress in a home in Westminster and gave her an allowance. She in turn bore him 5 children over the following 19 years. She was seen regularly playing hostess at his country home in Hitchingbrook. She was very popular with all, smiling, flirting, and making all feel welcome. And Martha was gifted musically and had the best music training available. She then embarked on a career as an opera singer. Mr. James Hackman was born in 1753 in Gosport in Hampshire. His parents purchased him an ensign's commission in the 68th Regiment of Foot, and he rose to be lieutenant. But finding he didn't suit army life, he turned his thoughts to the church and entered into orders. And soon he obtained a living at Weverton in Norfolk. On the morning of the 7th of April 1779, he was in London, and he sat some time reading, but in the evening he took a walk to the Admiralty, where he saw Miss Ray go into the coach along with Signora Galli, who attended her. The coach drove to Covent Garden Theatre, where she stayed to see the performance of A Love in a Village. Ray and her companion, the Italian singer Caterina Galli, took their seats close to the royal box, where they not only enjoyed some of the best views of the stage, but they were easily seen by the rest of the audience. And the two women would be joined during the evening by a number of male admirers with whom they would chat and flirt while the performance was in progress. Mr. Hackman went into the theatre at the same time, but not able to contain the violence of his passion and jealousy, returned to his lodgings and took 2 loaded pistols to the playhouse, and he waited till the play was over. As Miss Ray was ready to step into the coach, he took a pistol in each hand, walked up behind her, pulled her sleeve, and as she turned towards him, he fired point blank. The other gun he aimed at himself, but it misfired, and he'd fallen to the ground, and he was witnessed beating himself over the head, saying, "Oh, kill me, for God's sake, kill me." After a struggle, he was secured and his wounds dressed. He then was carried before Sir John Fielding, who committed him to Tothill Fields Bridewell, and then to Newgate, where a person was appointed to do suicide watch over him. In Newgate, as he knew he had no favour to expect, he prepared himself for the awful charges he was to face. At the trial, Mr. McNamara deposed that at 11:15 p.m. on Wednesday the 7th day of April, and seeing Miss Ray, whom he had some acquaintance, he offered his assistance to hand her to her coach, and just as they were in the very piazzas, very near the carriage, he heard a report of a pistol and felt an impression on his right arm, which arm she held with her left, and she instantly dropped. He thought that the pistols had fired elsewhere and that she had fallen from the fright, and therefore fell on his knees to help her up, but finding his hands bloody, he then knew what had happened. With the assistance of a link boy, he carried Martha to the nearby Shakespeare Tavern. Dennis O'Brien, a surgeon, examined the wound of Martha, and he found it to be a mortal wound. Mary Anderson, a fruit woman, deposed that just as the play was over, she saw two ladies and a gentleman coming out of the playhouse, and a gentleman in black following them. Lord Sandwich's coach was called. When the carriage came up, the gentleman handed the other lady into it. The lady that was shot stood behind. When the gentleman in black came up, he laid hold of her gown and pulled two pistols out of his pocket. The one in his right hand he discharged at the lady, and the other in his left he discharged at himself. They fell feet to feet, and he beat himself violently over the head with his pistol and desired that someone would kill him. Mr. Mahon, an apothecary, wrenched the pistol out of Hackman's hand with which he was beating himself, and as he lay on the ground with a constable, he then took him to his house and dressed the wounds. The Reverend Hackman being called upon for his defence, and he addressed the court with the following words: "I stand here this day, the most wretched of human beings, and confess myself criminal in the high degree. Yet, while I acknowledge with shame and repentance that my determination against my own life was formal and complete, I protest with the regard of the truth which comes my situation, that the will to destroy her, she who was dearer to me than my own life, was never mine until a momentary frenzy overcame me and induced me to commit the deed which I now deplore." The jury returned their verdict of guilty, and he was sentenced to be hanged, and the unhappy man heard the sentence pronounced him with a resignation to his fate, and employed the very short time allowed murderers after conviction for repentance and prayer. During the procession to Tyburn, he seemed stunned and said little, and when he arrived at Tyburn, got out of the coach, mounted the cart, and after spending some time in prayer, he was hanged on April the 19th, 1779. The newspapers and the public wanted to know why this had happened, and it led to all sorts of rumours and reports. What emerged was that Hackman had been in his army days a frequent visitor to Hinchinbrook. When attached to his regiment, Hackman and his men had visited Lord Sandwich at Hinchinbrook, and Martha was her usual charming self, and Hackman felt feelings he could not have possibly believed. But was this love an unrequited love affair? Not if we believe the publication of the succinctly titled The Case and Memoirs of the late Rev James Hackman and his acquaintance with the late Martha Ray, which purported to be an account of their affair given whilst Hackman was in jail awaiting execution. In this, he confessed that their first meeting led to a full-blown affair, and they indulged themselves in love as privately as possible. And these events set suspicions with Lord Sandwich, and Martha eventually ended their affair. But if we're to believe Hackman's account, we need to look at a couple of factors. Lord Sandwich kept other mistresses, although Martha was certainly his favourite, but she would have known, or at least suspected. And she was a clearly flirtatious and certainly a virile woman with desires, having had 5 children. And James Hackman was a handsome young man, and it must have been obvious that he desired her. With him being in the army and the regiment moving, a short, discreet affair may have been perfect for Martha. Whatever the events, clearly Hackman remained besotted with Martha, and he would show these tendencies, which we would consider to be a stalker these days, writing letters, taking lodgings near her London home, and watching her. It was clear that in the end, he couldn't live without her anymore, and set his tragic plan in motion. He claimed he had no intentions of killing her that evening, but intended to get her attention by putting a gun to his own head, and he would have either gained her love at this gallant action or fallen like a heroic lover. This was of course disputed by the defence, pointing out the fact he brought 2 guns. And Hackman, whilst waiting for sentence, wrote to Sandwich offering his apologies, to which Sandwich wrote back, giving him forgiveness and pity, but that he had disturbed his peace of mind forever. Martha's body was interred at a church in Elstree next to her mother, and on the instructions of Lord Sandwich, she was buried in the same dress that she wore that fateful night just 1 week before. Hackman's body was given to surgeons for dissection. And that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you do, please leave me a review, join me on Twitter, and until next time, bye bye.